news today on eNCA live from Johannesburg. I'm Yuveka Rangapa. A very good morning to you. Our top story this hour: a 72-year-old man with a fever was isolated at the Potchefstroom Hospital. Radio station OFM reported that a ward at the hospital was under quarantine because he has symptoms of Ebola. But the health department is denying this. Well, joining us on the line now is health spokesperson Maila to give us some clarity on this. A very good morning to you, Joe. Can you tell us what is the condition of this particular patient this morning?
Well, good morning to you and good morning to the viewers. I just must say that when a patient comes to hospital for whatever reason, people just immediately say it is Ebola, and I think that it is extremely irresponsible to do so. What we need to do is to make sure that we give the consulting doctor time to consult with the patient and diagnose what is the problem before we can be calling radio stations to say there is an Ebola case. In this particular instance, somebody came into the hospital with fever, and people already just called radio stations to say that there is an Ebola case in the country. And I think that that is not correct. What we know is that a person came into the hospital with fever, and this person has never been outside of South Africa, and therefore it is unlikely that you can look at possibilities of Ebola. However, the doctors are doing all they know what to do to make sure that they diagnose what is the problem with the patient.
Joe, while you have established that he has not been outside of South Africa, have you managed to find out whether he's been in contact with anyone who might have been outside of the country?
Well, that is the point. At the interview, those kind of things were not established, and therefore that's why we are saying that we need to make sure that we give doctors an opportunity to do their work. Only after the diagnosis will be able to know what is bothering the patient. At this point, the patient did not come because there is Ebola. The patient came to the hospital because he was feeling sick, and that is what doctors are doing at this point in time.
All right, Joe, but it does seem like you are taking the necessary precautions anyway in terms of isolating him. Has it become standard practice of late, due to the Ebola scare, though, that anybody with a high fever would be placed in isolation? Are you placing everybody who comes to a hospital with a high fever in isolation?
Exactly. When you isolate a patient, it's not an invention that came because of Ebola. That has been going on in the medical practice anyway. All the time, and therefore that does not mean that when a person is monitored closely, therefore there is Ebola or chances of Ebola. We are just saying that it is important that we give doctors chance to do their work, and only then after the diagnosis we'll be able to establish what is the problem with the patient. But it looks like in South Africa, when you have fever or you are in hospital and you are being monitored closely, people start saying things like it is Ebola and calling radio stations, causing panic. I don't think that it is correct. Otherwise, we are just scaring ourselves where it is not necessary. What we need to do is to give the consulting doctors chance to do their work, and only then we'll be able to diagnose the problem, and if need be, we'll be able to tell the nation what is bothering the person. But I don't think that it is correct that every time somebody comes to hospital, it's monitored closely, then it is Ebola. Because isolating a patient does not mean that it is Ebola. That has been there in medical practice anyway.
All right, Jen, and understandably, look, there would be some panic about Ebola right now, especially since reports of people contracting it, those who haven't even been to West Africa at the stage over the past few months. But just to sort of allay fears this morning, this person just has a fever, is not showing any other symptoms of Ebola at this stage.
We are saying the patient came to the hospital because he's sick, and the doctors are doing what they can to make sure that they establish what is wrong with the patient, and only then we'll be able to know for sure what is the problem with the patient. But it doesn't look like it is Ebola at this stage. It was just fever, and therefore the doctors are doing what they have to do to establish what is the problem with the patient.
Right, and the hospital not been placed under quarantine or anything like that, according to earlier reports?
No, the patient is just being monitored closely in isolation, of course, but that does not mean the whole hospital is under quarantine because there is a problem of Ebola. It is just that the patient is sick and very old, and therefore you need to make sure that you provide the necessary care to the patient.
Okay, thank you very much for your time this morning, Joe Maila, Department of Health Spokesperson.